We're joined now by Nomi Prince, senior fellow at think tank Demos. She's also author of It Takes a Pillage. She's a former managing director at Goldman Sachs. Also with us, Jonathan Capehart. Nomi, welcome back.
Thanks, Dylan.
I feel like it's a classic example of the emperor naked in the middle of the room, not having clothing. Everybody can see that this is happening. Everybody can see that it is a massive bank theft perpetrated with taxpayer subsidies, and yet the CEO of Goldman Sachs over the weekend now claiming he's doing God's work.
Well, you know, first of all, when I was at Goldman, we didn't have prayer meetings before deals. So,
you did or did not?
The whole God's work thing is a little odd. And you know, I think they do understand the anger. I truly do not think they care. And so when you come in talking about this virtuous cycle and raising capital for other things to occur and to create jobs, first of all, as we know, jobs have been lost. And as we know, the only cheap capital that has been created is the capital that Goldman has received when it transformed itself into a bank holding company last September, and then very stealthily transformed itself into a financial holding company this August, which allows it to have gotten the cheap backing for their capital from the government, as well as other perks, as well as continue doing exactly what it does in terms of its risk-taking and its proprietary trading and its private equity deals to make the kind of profits that it's making.
Jonathan Capehart.
Yeah.
I used to, when I started this coverage going back a year ago, or a year and a half ago, however long it's been, my concern was people don't understand what's happening, and as a result, nothing will be done about it.
Right.
Now I sit here, and it's quite clear to me that, honestly, everybody understands what has happened and what is happening, or at least a version of it, and yet still nothing is done about it. Why is Washington, D.C. so tone-deaf to an electorate that knows that there's been these subsidies paid to the banks? They may even believe that it had to be done to save the system, but they also know nothing is being done after the fact other than to legalize too big to fail, to continue the exemptions. Why does Washington not get it?
Washington doesn't get it because the electorate, the angry electorate, which is, we know, it's angry, hasn't taken the extra step of burning up the phone lines on Capitol Hill. They made their anger known at the ballot box last Tuesday. But what they now have to do is to take those demonstrations and that anger. Remember when you had those folks on a couple weeks ago who were leading those bank protests in
the
Chicago?
American Bankers meeting. Yep.
Right. Those folks need to come to Washington and make the folks on Capitol Hill understand that they are angry. And while all this talk about derivatives and these things that, quite frankly, confuse me, and I'm certain it confuses, you know, lots of people out there in the rest of the country, but they do know and agree with you, Dylan, that there's a major theft going on, and that they're the ones who are going to be left paying for the thievery, but they're not taking that anger and making folks in Washington understand it. And you know, you have people, members of Congress, coming on all the time saying, what we need is for the American people to call us, because that's what gets our attention. And so far, that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I want to go back to Goldman Sachs, Nomi, for a second here. Is the reason this hasn't happened in terms of any real legislative change is because of the leadership of the Lord at Goldman Sachs, as Lord Blankfein put it, and because they have the Lord behind them, they're able then to make sure that the laws are never changed to kill their magic money stealing machine because they got the protection of God? Is it like a crusade?
Well, you know, again, I think God probably doesn't even get it, and to some extent, Goldman, I think, thinks it's stronger than God, and it certainly had the presence throughout the bailout, throughout the subsidies. You know, with Hank Paulson as Treasury Secretary last year, and now Tim Geithner, who is part of the entire creation and concoction of the theft that went on, is sitting there dodging questions, whether it's on Meet the Press or whether it's in front of congressional leaders, as to what this firm has done and everything else. And I agree with Jonathan. You know, we as people need to get a lot angrier. We need to get a little of the Howard Beale sentiment from Network and be like, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. I mean, that is what we need.
I mean, the reality is the solution is quite simple, Nomi, and please correct me if I'm wrong. If you simply put everything in public and made it illegal to do some proprietary casino gambling with taxpayer money, a lot of the ability to steal will go away. No.
Well, exactly. There were no strings attached, not just to that little mini TARP fund, which $700 billion wasn't small, but was only a part of what ultimately was $17.5 trillion worth of gifts to Wall Street, a lot of which went through the Fed till this day, secretive loan facilities and everything else. So, yeah, if you opened everything up, which should be what the White House should want, which should be what the Treasury Secretary should do, and should be what Congress should demand, if we made that stuff public, people would know the extent of the theft, and we should have attach strings to any of this money, any of these gifts, and say, look, you know what? If you are getting money from us, from the taxpayer, from the federal government, you know, you have an obligation not to use it to risky ventures and not to use it to pay these kinds of bonuses, but to use it, actually not even to take it, literally.
Yeah, to be fired and go away, I think is what your obligation is.
And say,
yeah. I think, you know, if this TV show fails, I don't think the government's going to give me any money. I think I'm just going to get fired and sent home.
You could try.
Yeah, we'll see.
You are doing a service, Dylan. You've got to keep on going with this because getting the truth out there is hugely important.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, again, I might be doing Satan's work if Goldman is doing God's work. A pleasure, you two. Who knows? Anyway, everybody's got their opinion, but the Lord apparently leads Goldman Sachs.